So I'm good? You can hear me? Okay. Can we talk? Okay. Again, my name is Veronica, and I live in St. Paul. And I am primarily a racial justice organizer in the African American community. And maybe for about 7 years, I've been organizing in the historic Rondo neighborhood, the African American neighborhood of St. Paul, in regards to the impacts of the new light rail line that's being built as I speak in St. Paul, connecting downtown Minneapolis to downtown St. Paul. And on the surface, you know, that project just looks like a train that's being built. But kind of spinning off a little bit of what Shalini was doing is really making, you know, ripple effect connections. And a lot of the work I've been doing along that corridor has been doing just that, looking at the intersections of race, class, and environmental justice. And doing it in the context of, you know, an oppressed community, which also has some really interesting dynamics that I've been really having some ahas and some discoveries around. So, you know, that's what I, you know, want to talk about in some more detail. But when we talk about the intersection of race, class, and environmental justice with a train, you know, you might be wondering, okay, well, where does that fit? You know, a project of that magnitude has a lot of intersections where a project like that has some association with jobs. A project of that magnitude is not simply about, you know, building a train, but it's about the redevelopment of a corridor. So there's an economic another aspect of an economic component. And it's also talking about, along with that redevelopment of a corridor, it's talking about land use, how land is being used or reused. And that encompasses some environmental impacts. You know, looking at what will traffic patterns, how will traffic patterns be changed? How will, you know, what was I going to say? You know, how also will housing formations take shape? How will new developments occur around the corridor in terms of how tall buildings will be? You know, what's the new zoning requirements? So, you know, when you look at it from that aspect, there's a lot of overlap. And so a lot of my work has dealt with recognizing that a project like that has various impacts. And when you look at University Avenue, especially in St. Paul, which is where, you know, a lot of campaign activity has been going on, and where the light rail is going to intersect, it's going to intersect in Ward 1, which is kind of the most, you know, the most, if not one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, and certainly in St. Paul. But it has a majority-minority concentration that now has not only, you know, the concentration of African Americans, folks from the old Rondo neighborhood since the late 60s and, you know, earlier than that, to a lot of new, recent arrived immigrants, primarily from Southeast Asia, you know, secondarily from Africa, and some Latinos also who have settled along that corridor. And so with the building of the line, one of the issues that we raised was the impact to the folks who are already there. And a lot of times you would hear the policymakers and the planners, talk about the good aspects of the project, but from a writer's standpoint, saying, well, this is what is going to save time for travelers. This is going to help get people out of their cars onto the train. And yes, those are good, hopeful, optimistic selling points and aspirations for that project. But rarely have you heard about the interfacing of a new infrastructure into an existing low-income, minority community that has a concentration of small, mom and pop and ethnic businesses, that has, a concentration of low-income minority residents, and, and folks that already have a history with a mega infrastructure project being built through their community, and what's the cumulative effect, of, another layer coming into a community. And what are the economic implications from their viewpoint? What are the land use implications from their viewpoint? What are the social implications from their viewpoint? And those questions were never a part of the analysis. So it goes to show you how a lot of times our issues aren't even on the table to be understood. And that in and of itself creates implications and problems that we grapple with every day in our community. So anyway, I'm doing this work, but in the Rondo neighborhood. And, I think an observation that I've really been making is just grappling too with kind of that innate internalized oppression of, there's nothing that, we can do, or, the system is going to do what they're going to do. And so why try? And, trying to overcome that at times can be just as challenging as dealing with the power structure itself. And so, I've kind of came up with this term of there exists within the community inertia, some kind of inertia of internalized oppression and, the power structure working in tandem with each other that's not creating progress for the community. And it made me start to realize how, even within our own community, we can be a force or an aid of our own oppression. And that's something that we really don't talk very, very much about, and really grappling with that and understanding that so that we become conscious agents, conscious and intentional agents, and not being, co-agents of our own oppression. And that's a different dialogue that needs to take place versus the dialogue with the power structure of, no, this is what we don't want, this is what we do want, and this is how we're demanding to get that. And I don't quite, have the solution, but we're really working through that solution to where a number of those of us who've been advocating around the Central Core has certainly put out an alternative proposal of how we would like to see that corridor redeveloped and how the project can interface with us, seeing as how we really had no change in directing if the project was going to come into our community. So now we're grappling with how it would come into our community. With that, we've been proposing to create that aspect of the community as a World Cultural Heritage District, where a number of the Southeast Asian merchants have kind of been galvanizing over the years, wanting to create a cultural destination place that they're dubbing as Little Mekong. And the historic Rondo community is also trying to create, or not recreate, but kind of regain its Rondo Renaissance and trying to revitalize its economic engine. And so, so we're kind of putting forth an alternative vision, but at the same time pressing up against the negative aspects that the project will create and demanding of the officials to address our impacts and also try to guarantee opportunities associated with the project. And that's really a tall order because, we believe, of course, fairly and justly asking for what is fair and just, again, given that we couldn't redirect, this project in the very beginning. So I don't have, the final picture because it's one of these long-range plans that's taking shape, but we have had some gains. They've been some pretty big, others have been small, but we have created some influence and altered some outcomes that we're hoping will help us stay in this community and thrive throughout, its development and operation. So, I can answer any other questions a bit later on.